Imagine confessing to your entire camp that you spent last night with someone other than your partner. You wouldn't need to confess anything, because there was nothing to hide. Every shelter sat within earshot of the next. Every fire lit up every face nearby. In a group of 30 or 40 people sleeping practically on top of each other, secrets simply didn't exist as a concept. So neither, in any modern sense, did cheating. That's the world our species spent the overwhelming majority of its existence in. Small, wandering bands, no priests, no marriage licenses, no vows promising forever. A man and a woman might build a shared shelter, split the work of staying alive, and raise children side by side. The connection was real. Humans are actually unusual among mammals for forming any kind of lasting pair bond at all. Only a small handful of mammal species do it. But real and permanent turn out to be two very different things. We tend to assume lifelong monogamy is the default setting humanity has been drifting away from ever since. The evidence says the opposite. Anthropologist Frank Marlowe studied the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer people in Tanzania who still live largely as foragers today. He found that only around 1 in 5 adults stays with a single partner for an entire lifetime. Most people paired up, had a child or two, separated and paired up again. This wasn't a modern habit creeping backward into an ancient society. Researchers believe it's close to how things worked for most of human history. And more often than you'd expect, it was the woman walking away. She'd gather her children and her few belongings and relocate to another part of camp, to another man's fire. Nobody chased her down. Nobody had the authority to, because there had been no ceremony promising a lifetime in the first place. There was no vow being broken, just a relationship reaching its natural end and a new one beginning. Getting a partner to begin with wasn't simple, though. A young man interested in a particular woman often had to move in with her family and effectively work for them, hunting, hauling meat back to their fire for months, sometimes years, while she and her parents watched to see if he was worth keeping around. If he proved himself, she was his. If not, he walked away with nothing to show for years of effort. It wasn't romance in the modern sense, it was closer to a long, unpaid job interview. And meat was the salary. Was it always one man, one woman? Not even close. Anthropologist George Murdoch compiled records from more than 1,000 human societies across the globe and found that in roughly 8 out of 10 of them, men were permitted more than one wife at a time. Strict lifelong monogamy wasn't the baseline of human culture. It was closer to the rare exception. When a man did have multiple partners, it was almost always because he was an unusually skilled hunter or a respected leader, someone who could realistically provide for more than one household. Sometimes the co-wives were sisters, sharing a single home, but even this arrangement was uncommon. Most men were lucky to keep even one partner long-term, and what made one man more desirable than another had very little to do with looks or charm. It came down to one brutal, practical measure. Could he hunt? Among the Ak people of Paraguay, still partly forest foragers, researchers found the most skilled hunters fathered nearly double the children of average hunters, both inside and outside formal partnerships. A man who returned to camp with meat again and again was chosen, and chosen again. A poor hunter could go his whole life essentially invisible to the women around him. None of this made ancient love calm or simple. If anything, it made it combustible. You fell for someone while sleeping, shoulder to shoulder with every other adult in your world, a potential rival always just one campfire away. Researchers Martin Daly and Margot Wilson, studying what actually drives people to kill one another across cultures and history, found one motive surfacing over and over at the top of the list: sexual jealousy, a partner who had strayed. In a camp with zero privacy, an empty sleeping spot at dawn didn't stay a secret for long, and it didn't always end peacefully. But don't mistake any of this for a loveless world. Anthropologists William Jankowiak and Edward Fisher went looking for romantic love. The real thing, the aching, obsessive, can't-sleep kind, across 166 different cultures. They found clear evidence of it in 147 of them. In love poems, folk tales, forbidden elopements, songs about longing. That specific, overwhelming feeling wasn't invented by any modern culture. It was already alive around fires deep in the Stone Age. So if lifelong pairing wasn't the norm, why did people pair up at all? Because human babies are almost absurdly demanding. Our brains ballooned in size over evolutionary time, and the price was children born essentially unfinished, unable to walk, feed themselves, or survive alone for even a single day, for years. No two people alone could reliably keep a child fed, warm, and safe in that environment, especially with close to half of all children never reaching age 15. A second set of hands wasn't a bonus. It was frequently the difference between a child surviving and a child not surviving. One group took that logic somewhere genuinely strange. Along river systems in Venezuela live the Bari people, who historically believed a child could have more than one biological father, that every man a woman slept with during pregnancy contributed something to the baby forming inside her. So a woman might openly take a second partner, perhaps a skilled fisherman alongside a skilled hunter, and the community accepted both men as fathers. Both might show up at the birth, both claiming the child, one bringing fish, the other meat. Did it actually help the child survive? Anthropologist Stephen Beckerman tracked outcomes and found that children recognized as having two fathers reached age 15 about 80% of the time, compared to only 64% for children with a single father. For the Bari, an extra father wasn't a cultural quirk. It was a survival strategy that measurably worked. The search for partners didn't stop at the edge of camp either. Once or twice a year, scattered bands would converge, sometimes hundreds of people walking for days to reach a shared river or valley, to trade, feast, and dance through the night. And underneath all of it ran a constant, quiet current of pairing off. A young woman who had seen the same dozen faces her entire life might suddenly meet someone from a completely different territory. By the time the gathering broke up, she might leave with him toward land she'd never set foot on. More relationships likely began at these seasonal gatherings than anywhere else in ancient life. And the lifelong faithful couple, they did exist. Every so often, an old man and woman had genuinely stayed together decades, weathering everything side by side. But they were notable precisely because they were rare. The exception pointed out to younger generations, the way we still talk about a couple married 70 years like it's remarkable. They weren't the rule. They were the outlier everyone remembered because outliers are memorable. So was anyone loyal? People bonded deeply, and they bonded often. But one partner, for life, no exceptions, was never really the human default. Our ancestors paired and separated, stayed and strayed, sometimes shared the very idea of fatherhood, and traveled real distances chasing something that felt like love. The single faithful couple at the dawn of humanity is a tidy story, but it belongs to a much later chapter than we usually assume. And that restless, jealous, fiercely bonding species never actually disappeared. It's still you. Whatever pulls you towards someone, whatever keeps you up at night wondering where they are, someone felt exactly that around a fire, tens of thousands of years before either of you existed.